I'm starting out with a bold statement. Emotions drive behavior. Emotions are conscious or unconscious mental states that we respond to in response to the external and the internal world. They manifest in the heart, in the voice, in the skin, and sometimes even in your teeth and your fists. But humans are emotional beings. And that's why it's important to understand what is it about emotions that's so important that's driving behavior. What's also to think about is positive emotions, and you might experience about 300 of them in a day, build and open up resources amongst us. But at the same time, negative emotions, and there might be about 200 of those too, can limit our responses and at times even lead to despair and depression. All of us experience and go through this in a day. And what worries me is we don't spend enough time trying to cultivate how to manage these emotions. So here's where I want to make a jump and say emotions don't arise in the heart, but in the brain. And that's a complicated circuit up there on what actually goes on in the brain when emotions are experienced. So these are some complicated areas up there, but these are regions. For example, the hypothalamus is responsible for the expression of emotion. The amygdala is responsible for the intensity of emotion. The hippocampus, the seat for memory, is responsible for your memory of emotion. The olfactory bulb sets up the link between smells and emotion. But what makes this very interesting is the fact that it links to the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is this part of the brain where decision making happens. And for all of us who think we make rational decisions all the time, I can assure you, we make emotional decisions all the time. Okay? And you can see here that because there is a neuroanatomical connect or a link between the emotional circuit and the decision-making circuit, that emotions influence all our decisions. Given that, what can we try and do to be able to regulate and manage these emotions? Given that we just talked about the fact that there are young people, why even older people who experience negative emotions and can end up doing things that they really don't want to. Why would you want to build emotional resilience? It helps you cope with adversity. It helps you adapt to change. Return to baseline after that jump that happened to the negative or the emotional state. And most importantly, it builds well-being. So here's the case that I want to make. Just like you teach a child or yourself to brush their teeth or to cycle or to learn to read, you can similarly teach human beings. You can teach the human brain how to manage emotions. And the idea is to use what is called a knowledge and practice approach. Knowledge builds relies on what is called declarative learning, and practice is what relies on procedural learning. Here we go back to an idea which is powerful for all learning that you do every day. The brain is not static, but it's malleable. And even this moment, I am changing your brain. Once you leave this room, your brain is not going to be the same brain you came back with after all the talks that you will hear. That happens because of a process called neuroplasticity. So your brain changes, and if we are able to build circuits that we are able to practice on, we can create those Google Maps in the brain, which allow us to go back to what will make us emotionally resilient. So what is it that we might want to do? And what might be critical periods that parents in the audience might want to rely on because of the fact that there are critical periods in brain development? And here I want to draw your attention to the fact that the brain matures at different rates. So whilst sensory and motor regions, which are the regions meant for movement and for the senses, mature earlier, the frontal cortex actually matures late. So till the age of 25, the brain continues to mature. But what happens in adolescence is the emotional cortex has matured. And therefore, the risk-taking that you often see in adolescence is largely a consequence of the fact that the emotion cortex has developed, but the frontal decision-making cortex has not yet developed enough. And that's where the role of emotional resilience comes in a very big way. How can we establish those practices or build in those procedures which we can begin to adopt, not only in adolescence, but also later on in adulthood, as we begin to experience a larger variety of emotions. So here are two sets of ideas that I want to leave you with, because emotion resilience is a consequence of what we build within ourselves and what we build around the environment, because we live in a social structure. So here are some competencies that you might want to build within yourself. This is true for children as well as adults. Build a sense of positive identity. Build a sense of self-awareness. Be connected to your body so you know when your voice is going high, when your face changes, when you're saying something, when your body language changes. So it's being connected and in tune with your body that's important. A sense of positive identity is important. Positive self-talk is important. Building emotional literacy. Today on your ride back home, think of how many emotions you can name. And many of you will probably end up with 9 or 10. We have over 250 emotions that we experience. Learn to name some of them and to relate them. Learn to live in the present. And a lot of that leads to building attention and can be very simply done by just breathing deeply. Next time you are in a difficult situation or your child is in a difficult situation, just count 3 and get people to breathe and then decide on the next part. Next time you want to respond to an angry email, write it and save it in your inbox. Don't send it. Send it the next day. Very likely you will not end up sending it the next day, because we are just reacting and not responding. 2 other aspects which are critical are critical thinking, the ability to connect back to that cognitive brain, the decision-making brain, to decide and to pull away the emotional aspect of a decision. And finally, grit, the fact that the ability to change lies within us and not in the circumstances. Sometimes it's important to just accept the circumstance and go on with it. What can we do as a community to build emotional resilience around us? Very importantly, start talking less and listening more. Listening more without judgment, without interruption. Start developing empathy, compassion, and building healthy relationships. I think the most important lesson that I have learned in the process towards building emotional resilience is to practice what I preach. So if all of us begin to practice some of these, we will start to build emotional resilience amongst ourselves and those around us. Because emotions, remember, are contagious. If you are calm, people around you will also become calmer. Thank you very much.